I can't tell you how many times I record this. Well, you don't know this, but one of the reasons why I kind of slow down on this day in Tobago history is because, and I'm just speaking my truth here. Like you could be upset about that if you want, but this is me as a Tobagonian speaking my truth. It started to get kind of dark for me, right? In that when I really started delving into the history of Tobago and examining its history, there's several themes that just kept recurring, and I knew that if I kept going with it, I too would sit in a dark place, right, with it. And I don't think a lot of Tobagonians and Trinidadians really understand what being in this union really means and how it has manifested itself. One of the major points of contention I'm trying to wrap my mind around is, why do we not celebrate that union? Could you imagine being in a marriage for a century and there being no sort of celebration of that marriage in any way, shape, or form, right? And you can say, hey, Japanese people do celebrate things, right? And that's fine. And that is fine. I feel like we're just able to tolerate each other. I feel like we're just able to tolerate each other. And I feel like there's no recognition of the fact that more than tolerate, right? Tobagonians are in a very disadvantageous position. Tobago was a colony, right, in and of itself. Trinidad was a colony in and of itself. Trinidad's historical development completely different from Tobago's historical development. I know a lot of people are like, what do you mean? The cultures aren't that different. They are that different. And I don't know, as a Tobagonian who has lived in Trinidad for a significant amount of time, like, I see the difference. I don't know if Trinidadians who come to live in Tobago see the difference. There's a difference in living in a place where everybody knows each other. There is no, oh, I'm going south and I don't know anybody in south. Or me and passing the lighthouse and I don't know how to get to a place. Like, there are people from Port of Spain right now who have no clue how to even get to San Fernando. They don't know, right? So I'm saying, like, it's different. It is different. Oh, like, no, it's the same. Like, I'm Tobagonian and I'm telling you it's different. I'm gonna say something that is really rawness now. This is just me speaking to you. Trinidadians, for whatever reason, right? Whatever their historical makeup, why it is that way, I can't say, right? But they are definitely more open to outside influence. And I don't want to say always, again, I try to be as PC, but in my truth still as possible. They are more apt, right, to being like, okay, we okay with giving up this part of our culture so that we could, do this other thing. And again, that is fine, but that is not the Tobago way. The Tobago way is like, you had to really work hard to convince Tobagonians to do something. I'm sure if you spoke to like KFC and those fast food restaurants, of how people was like, well, you're gonna carry a KFC in Tobago. Tobagonians just cook their food. They don't eat out and right? And I'm saying all of that to say is, I'm not saying that Tobagonians aren't eventually probably the same way, right? Maybe after decades of wearing them down, but Tobagonians are way more apt at holding on to their culture, holding on to their way of life, right? And just in that alone, there are differences. Trinidadians are definitely way more open to mixing than Tobagonians are. And you have to understand why that is. Why is that? When you live on an island, and when I was young, it was 45,000 people, right? For 45,000 people, the only way to keep 45,000 people safe, the only way to keep your culture preserved is very particular about the mixes that you do allow, right? And that, again, some may say, well, that's so xenophobic, and it's not about xenophobia, right? Holding on to my way of life or holding on to my culture isn't always about xenophobia. Sometimes it could be about xenophobia, and sometimes it's not, right? And to paint it with broad brushes, like, xenophobia and narcissism and all of these things. I'm not saying that those things don't exist, but it doesn't just always have to be one large brush. There are nuances. It's not something that can happen in one conversation, but I do wish that we would have these conversations, because I think it would further us along the path of realizing the kind of union that we want to see. One side has been telling you, and one side that is at the quote-unquote disadvantageous side, from the perspective of, remember, Tobago, its own colony, Trinidad, its own colony, right? So some British people like, oh, let me just put these two things together, right? These two things that really had nothing to do with each other from before, right? Let's just put these two things together. And then about 10 years into that wedding, somebody else comes and says, oh, I don't like how things going in on this side here. Let me just make this award of, or let me just make the woman financially dependent on the man. Like that's in essence what happened, right? It's like, because again, Tobago was collecting its own duties, it was able to earn its own money, it was functioning still as its own colony. It really was side by side. But then some British man come from somewhere, he was just like, I don't like how Tobago looking compared to Trinidad. Of course you're not going to like how Tobago looking compared to Trinidad. Trinidad is a larger island, has attracted more investment from you on that side. Tobago was based on one type of economy, but you didn't give them any opportunity to say, okay, well, let's transition to another kind of economy, or let's try some different things here. You just say, no, you're going to be now financially dependent on this one. Like, okay, so now I can't earn my own money, right? I dependent on you for everything. So, like, I don't know how we expect that people who are put in that position are not going to have some sense of like, whoa, And then on top of that, every time there's an opportunity to rectify this injustice, right? It's because it's an injustice. It's like, okay, yeah, this government is going to give you whatever word is the popping word at the time, right? We're going to give you self-government. We're going to, you're going to be able to run your own affairs and all the different things. There's always but it's going to be subject to Trinidad approval. So tell me again, where the real, do I have any power in this relationship? I don't have the power to really decide how my people are gonna thrive under this union, right? So in essence, you're telling the woman, no, you and your train have to depend on me forever. Forever. So yeah. So I get that today's Trinidadian would be upset when today's Tobagonian says things like, I feel it's not working for me. But why? Why are you getting upset? If the woman said, I feel like this financial arrangement where I have to come to you for money every minute is not working, would you be like, well, fine, go your way? That's how you react in a relationship. Like, I feel like that telling me so much about your character when you are willing to treat a person that you're in a union with like that. It tells me about your character, and yeah, we have to really be mindful of how we speak into each other. I'm not saying that Tobagonians probably do say things that are incendiary as well, but let's think about who has the balance of power here. Who have the balance of power? So, is somebody who doesn't have the power saying, I don't like being in this relationship, I don't like how you just treat me? Does that hurt more than the person who have the power saying, well, go, see how you can work out for you. I hope you can stand all the consequences. Although, if we really had to do this union thing, it had to be a different way. We had to do it a different way. It has to be characterized, it has to be structured differently in order for it to work. Come for me in the comments, though. Come for me in the comments. I don't care. Because I speak in my Tobago truth.